And so this means that a university researching for the military or for a military contractor must consider the possibility that this research is going to inevitably help kill someone. And moreover, this killing will not only be killing that's approved by our national government, but in the case of General Dynamics, it's killing in a war that Canada did not join. Iraq, Canada specifically voted not to, the Parliament voted not to go into Iraq, yet here we are in an institution that is supporting a military contractor that's producing vehicles to be sent into this army, into this war that we did not want to participate in. In the case of other US defense contracts, it's possible that the killing that these machines do could be done in Iran or Venezuela or Colombia or Syria, as we've found that recently the US has been making incursions into Syria from Iraq to chase after insurgents. And given the international aspect of the arms trade more broadly, it's not impossible that future Western researchers could be working on weapons contracts for European, Russian, or Chinese companies whose weapons could be used in Sudan, Georgia, Tibet. Again, there's no way to know this without any kind of public, open, transparent review process. So the danger that we see is of Western becoming an appendage of what's called the American military-industrial complex. Western could potentially become, a research and development subcontractor for companies like General Dynamics or Raytheon or Boeing or any of these large, billion-dollar weapons companies. And furthermore, one of our fears is that the university will start to become dependent on these kind of corporate military contracts for research funding, just as dependent as a lot of US congresspeople and senators have been, these who are lavishing tax cuts on these corporations in order to protect the jobs in their constituencies. It's not, we don't think that it's unlike, it's certainly possible here that Canadian politicians who want to see public funding for universities and research institutions cut could make the case, and then in cases have made the case, that if funding is available from the private sector, what is the role of the private sector in the university? So this is where we see military research on campus being part of a larger corporatization of the university, privatization of the university, which is leading essentially to budget cuts. So to this end, Counter-Stryker has been working to bring the university activities of General Dynamics and other military contractors under scrutiny, and to make known our ethical and political objections to this project, and to raise these wider issues of academic corporatization. So I want to talk a little bit here now about sort of two main projects that Counter-Stryker has historically had. The first is raising awareness of these kinds of military research projects on campus, and the second is advocating for some form of campus community involvement and oversight of the research through perhaps a public ethics review process. Now, our awareness raising activities include things like this, coming and speaking to panels like this one, doing information pickets and information distribution on campus. I mean, something as simple as just handing out leaflets, which I've actually found is one of the more effective ways. From my own informal surveys of students, it seems like just handing someone a leaflet is actually more effective than a Facebook group or a blog. And we've also been involved in community events. We've participated in the recent Regional Social Forum in the summer, as well as we have been holding a yearly speakers panel in March. I think we've done 3 so far. Has anyone attended any of the speakers panel we've had? There's been a few. I see actually presenters here. Excellent, past presenters. So that's sort of one half of what Counter-Stryker is working at doing, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from everyone here as to ways we might improve some of our awareness raising activities, or ways that you've heard about us that you've found were effective. And as I mentioned earlier, we've also been pushing for this formalized ethics review process on campus. In May of 2007, one of the founding members of Counter-Stryker and FIMS professor Nick Dyer-Witherford made a proposal to the Senate here, which is one of the decision-making bodies on campus, made a proposal for just such an ethics review process And his proposal was taking the University Research Board, which is the Senate committee that's in charge of various research protocols. And he outlined 4 propositions about military-related research that I'm just going to read for you here. The first was that military research raises special ethical issues, and I've already sort of talked about this, the fact that the military's specific function is the exercise of deadly force, and that research performed here on campus is basically performing research by proxy for General Dynamics customers. So I mentioned earlier that one of General Dynamics' customers is the National Guard of Saudi Arabia, which is, arguably one of the most repressive regimes in the world. So you need to keep that in mind, that researchers working on these projects are, de facto working for the Saudi Arabian regime. The second issue that he raised was that of academic freedom, which is important, and I think some of the other speakers will be talking about the importance of academic freedom. And though it's important, it's not an absolute. The very fact that any researcher has to go through an ethics review process if they're going to work with animal subjects or human subjects indicates that there are certain protocols and boundaries within which research needs to take place. I'm a PhD student myself, and I know that if I was going to do any kind of research that involved, say, interviewing all of you on this panel, or your feelings about this panel, I would have to submit an ethics review form for review to the university, and if I wanted outside funding from the government, I would have to submit a separate review to them. But for us, it seems anomalous. There's no comparable ethics review process for making a weapon that's going to be used to kill and maim and abduct and displace people in a cause that Canadians voted not to support. The third issue is that of practicality. Performing such a military review or ethics review of military-related research is practical. This university already has a number of large, complex bodies like the University Council on Research Ethics Involving Humans and the University Council on Animal Care and Animal Use Subcommittee of that committee. These exist in order to review research for involving human subjects or involving animals. And we can envision a comparable type of committee made up of community involvement, experts in international law, human rights, the medical effects of weaponry that would be able to evaluate various military-related research projects that are submitted to the campus. And we also strongly hope that there would be a public component of this review board hearing where public interest groups from the community, the campus community, and the larger community of London could raise their concerns as well. And the fourth and final issue that was raised to the Senate was that such an ethics review is part of this university's obligation to the campus community and the larger community. And it's an obligation in part to the potential victims of these weapons that we're helping to manufacture, but there's also a responsibility to the faculty and students here. So if we're accepting a company like General Dynamics onto campus, we're sort of tacitly accepting that its presence on campus is going to be a welcome contribution to the educational process here at Western. So we as a campus and university community have to ensure that this process does not even indirectly implicate students and researchers and faculty in potential violations of international law or offenses against human rights. So it's not so much that we need to have this ethics review just to protect the potential victims, but it's part of our responsibility to ourselves to ensure that there's not researchers and students being implicated in something they might later regret. So this was presented in May or March, I believe, of 2007 to the Senate, and sadly their response was very disappointing.